Okay, the broadcast is live. Hello, greetings, and assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's a wonderful evening of 19th August, recognized largely as World Humanitarian Day, which is a day dedicated to humanitarian aid workers. This live session of Life Beyond the Border, Contribution to the Aid Workers, has been organized under the platform of Ycoalition with partnership with Commonwealth Youth Peace Ambassadors Network, Goals for Generation, and Inclusive Bangladesh, which is dedicated to the humanitarian aid workers who have been providing their generous support to all the people who are in need all over the world. Even in this dire situation on COVID 19, with utmost respect to all humanitarian aid workers, doctors, nurses, and medical practitioners who are risking their lives to help others survive this pandemic, I'm your host, MD Rahan Shurid. In this session of Life Beyond the Border, I would be introducing, we have three very distinguished guests with us. All three of them are leaders in their own respective regions as humanitarian aid workers. They have contributed so much to the world so that we have a better life. The refugees, the humanitarian people have better lives. So, introducing our first guest, Mr. Wayne Bleier. Mr. Bleier is a trained child and family therapist with over 25 years of experience, supervising and implementing CP programs overseas in former Yugoslavia, Rwanda, Bangladesh, and many other countries. He has worked for IRC, Save the Children UK, Child Fund International, World Child UK, and UNICEF. Mr. Wayne holds a MSW degree from University of Washington, and currently he holds the position of Child Protection Manager and Case Management Specialist for DRC's program working in the Rohingya emergency in Bangladesh. Hello, Mr. Wayne, sir. It's been a
Hello.
pleasure.
Thank you.
It's been a really nice pleasure for you to join with us, and I hope you're doing well in this COVID 19 situation. I hope you're healthy.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I'm
Okay,
very well.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our second guest is our Mr. Mobasserul Islam, sir, who have experience of working as a journalist in the field of business and working with NGO and INGOs for several years. An inhabitant of Cox's Bazar having a good understanding of the Rohingya crisis in Cox's Bazar. He also have a vast understanding of NGO related laws and rules and regulations. He has in-depth feelings for the refugees. Hello, Mr. Mubashir Islam, sir. Hello, sir. Can you hear me, sir?
Hello, hello Raya.
Yes, sir. How are you doing, sir? I hope you're healthy in this situation of COVID 19.
Thank you so much. I am quite strong and healthy.
That's great. That's great. Alhamdulillah. That's great. So, thank you so much, sir. So, our third speaker is Mr. Ali Johar, sir. Mr. Ali Johar is the founder of Rohingya Literacy Program, education coordinator of Rohingya Human Rights Initiative, Rohingya and Global Youth Peace Ambassador recognized by the Rajiv Gandhi National Institute of Youth Development (RGNIYD) under the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports Government of India. In recognition of his work towards peace and development in 2017, Mr. Ali was awarded the South Asian People's Choice Youth Leader Award by the International Youth Committee. Recently, he has worked in an upcoming Bollywood movie named Rohingya as a dialogue writer and assistant to the director and as a cast of the movie. So, hello, Mr. Ali Johar, sir. I hope you are very healthy and doing well in this situation of COVID 19.
Yeah, thank you so much. Alhamdulillah, I'm fine and well.
Okay, that's great. So, we will be starting our session with a common question to all of you. is that in this situation of COVID-19, you have all been working as humanitarian workers. You're all experienced in your sectors, and you have a very good perspective on this line of working as a humanitarian aid worker. So, in this humanitarian development sector, what is your feeling after working so many years, and what is your understanding of this sector, and how has it progressed over the years? So I would be starting the answer to this question from Wayne sir, and about your experience on the humanitarian sector for working over 25 years in this sector, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. I can say I've been doing this for a long time, and it's been a real privilege to be able to work in so many countries with people from all over the world, and to try to make a positive contribution to vulnerable people's lives. And my particular expertise is in child protection, so that is protecting children from abuse, violence, and exploitation. And I've the one thing I can say is I've been able to do mostly what I believe was right, so I can sleep at night with my decisions. I always tell my staff that do whatever they need to do to be able to sleep at night. That's been allowed me to maintain my focus, and due to my experience, I've been able to impact the way the UN works in specific situations. My main concern is that the profession is becoming more technocrats and more about fundraising than helping people. So that's a change I've seen over the 26 years I've been doing this work. But I can say for me, it's been great. I've been able to do the things that I've only dreamed of, and I usually work in emergency situations and conflict situations, and I like that context because everything is fluid and you can really do a lot of work before things crystallize and governments take over. So, for me, that's been very rewarding to be able to do the things I believe in at a time when there's funding available and there's not as many regulations. So I think, thank you.
Uh, Thank you so much for your sharing your kind experience with us, and it has been a pleasure for you to join us and share your experience over so many years work experience. And I think the youth who are, or the audience who are watching, will also learn that it's in the end, when we get to have that good night's sleep, that's all that matters. And I think what you have been doing for so many years is great, and it had helped so many people to have a great night of sleep. And yeah, thank you so much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Bleier. So I would be moving on to Mr. Mobasserul Islam, sir, about your experience on the refugee sector and NGO sector over the years. Sir.
Thank you, Raihan. Thank you so
Sir.
much for giving me the opportunities to speak on this very day, and thank you, Coalition for giving me the opportunities. Uh, First, I would like to say that I feel very happy to be a humanitarian worker, and I have chosen this profession not only for livelihood. Being a humanitarian worker, I think one can enjoy to work on many different issues to support the beneficiaries. I find a heavenly happiness when I see the beneficiaries are happy through the services that I provide. Um, Once you see a nice smile in the face of a vulnerable person, it creates such a happiness in your mind that there is no comparison to it.
Yes,
Let
I
me
would
tell
really
you an
agree.
anecdote about my experience. Is that it is not that I have been working for many years. I have started my career in this field a few years ago. And at the very outset, I started working as a communication person with an NGO. That time, I used to take interviews of the beneficiaries. And once I was taking an interview of a young Rohingya mother. The story was so pathetic, and actually, it was emotional for me too. And I can tell you that working in this field, especially working with people like these type of people, it created such a bondings in my mind that it's almost a few years, but still the feeling is so strong. So it's the kind of pleasure that you cannot have. You cannot enjoy the such a kind of pleasure in other profession. Moreover, it is such a profession where there is a vast, where the canvas is actually very big, irrespective of creed, religion, and class. You have the ample opportunities to work in this field. And in my world, actually, I have the opportunities to work with international persons. Many of them are so renowned in this field, like Wayne. And it was a great pleasure also to work with Wayne, and we enjoyed our uh, days together a lot. And you can also gather so many versatile experiences from them, and you can also share your experiences, which is actually motivating also. So in a nutshell, I can tell you that I'm very happy to have the opportunities to work as a humanitarian worker.
Uh, that's really great to hear, and it's really great to hear your experience on this sector, and really great to hear about what you have worked on through these years. So I will be moving on to Mr. Ali Johar, sir, and I would really want to know about your experience in the humanitarian aid sector for over these years, sir.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and thanks to everyone that are listening today who have joined for this wonderful session. As introduced, I'm Ali Johar, and I work for the Rohingya children in India as an education coordinator. I also work for lead several humanitarians groups for emergency relief, policy making, as well as I also help students from several institutions and universities to work on their research paper. So, as a being a humanitarian, is a choice. Sometimes there are many. Sometimes we mistakenly realize that it is only the one who go to people, directly help or donate. These are the humanitarian worker. But what I have understood from my experience is, to become a humanitarian worker, you don't have to work for several years. You just go and smile to a vulnerable person, and that gives another smile from that vulnerable person, is also some sort of humanity you're serving. So uh, uh, in this age of 25 years, I have been into this humanitarian work for almost 8 years, since 2012, working with the children, working with the women, working with vulnerable with health problem, people from detention. It gives real pleasure. Once Wensa said something that, one, if I may able to interpret in a better way, that once you are a humanitarian worker, you can't find peace anywhere. Once you choose to be a humanitarian worker, you will never find any other field so pleasuring. It is a pleasure from within inside that you feel when you can help a person, and that gives hopes to that person you are helping. Working as a humanitarian worker or as an activist during these days, what I have realized is most of the time when we refer ourselves or any organization as a humanitarian aid worker or group, most of the time we sometimes don't realize that working for a community or for a people is uh, is somehow not really a solution. Maybe working with those people who are really affected to empower them is a really solution. Like, helping just one child to become educated, that will uplift a family for the lifetime. For his entire generation, he will pass through, will become educated, and they will not be, vulnerable, uh, or they will not be relied on someone help, and they can themselves help themselves as well as they can help others as well. So working with health sector, education, as an emergency relief also, I have worked with team like who have helped uh, uh, fire victims. So there were several fire victims in Delhi, Haryana. If I talk about, as I have worked especially in India, uh, so I have worked in Delhi, Haryana. So going there, talking with people who have victimized by the several effects from the, from several sectors, making them hopeful. It is something, I am really grateful to the God that for choosing me for this work.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Ali Johar sir, for your beautiful words, for your very inspiring words. And I also believe that being a humanitarian worker is a choice. It's a choice of giving hope to people. It's a choice of bringing a smile to people, and a smile to the people in their faces. And yes, it is a choice, and I hope we all make that choice and come forward to help all those people who are in need. So I would be moving on to Mr. Wayne Bleier, and as he's our distinguished guest, and I have a few questions for him. Uh, which I would be starting on that. How is the Rohingya refugee response different from other refugee responses? Because there are many refugee crises that has been happened in the world, such as the crisis in Yemen and the Syrian crisis, and there is also the Rohingya refugee crisis. So, how the response to the Rohingya refugee crisis different from all those other crises? Sir.
Okay, I can add a few points on that. I mean, first of all, for me, the size of the refugee movement and the speed in which it occurred was really unprecedented. I don't think anything like this has happened since Rwanda in,
Yes.
1996, when all the people fled to
Yes.
the then Zaire. It's also the largest refugee camp in the world. And I can say that the site is largely inadequate for the number of people, especially in water and hygiene situation, is worse than many contexts I've worked in. So you have a lot of shallow wells that get polluted. You have poor latrine situation. So it's the site itself is not adequate for all those people. One of the things that was very different was at the beginning we were totally unprepared, and the military basically took over at the beginning and brought order and built the camps. And usually humanitarian workers want humanitarian space. We don't want to be involved with military actors except maybe UN peacekeepers. So I think we were all pleasantly surprised at the cooperation that we were receiving at the beginning from the Bangladesh military. Of course, we were happy that they had been involved in many peacekeeping missions, so they were new to the humanitarian field. The other thing is that the camps are pretty accessible, and there's not that many security concerns for aid workers, which, for better or for worse, has allowed so many NGOs to work there. I think what's different for me is the number of national NGOs is in Bangladesh is very, there are very many and with a lot of experience, so that's also different. And the other thing that's really different is this is an emergency situation that's not in an active conflict zone. Most of the refugee or emergency situations I've worked in was in an ongoing conflict, so you had many security issues you had to deal with. But here, you're not. You're in a basically a safe place. The only difference is you have to commute hours to the refugee camp. I think one of the things that struck me at the beginning was there was the military set up the Maji system, which I hope it's changed by now because I haven't been in the camps, but that basically created a system of corrupt leadership who were extorting money, making decisions about marriage and consequences for people's behavior. And that was a difficult, we had to deal with these people, and, you know, some of them were very difficult. There was a general, you know, lack of rule of law in the camps, which is also different than many places I've worked. So I think that's the summary for me of what's different about this movement.
Okay, that's really great to hear, and I would also like to assure you that recently in the refugee camps there has been going on some works on sanitization, water works, and the NGOs and also the government has been stepping up the ladder to provide all we can do for the refugees, and I hope there is progress also in this sector. So I would be moving on to our next guest, Mobasserul Islam sir, for our next question, which is that the host communities were the first responders in the response of the refugee crisis in the Rohingya issue, and now it is said that the host communities are neglected and deprived of their involvement in the response. What could be done to maintain harmony between refugees and host community? So, in many cases, we see that the government in refugee crisis or in humanitarian crisis, most of the time the host community and the refugees, there is no harmony maintained because there are in several cases many conflicts the refugees have created. So what are your opinion in these issues, that how the host communities and refugees could maintain their harmony? Sir, Mobashir sir.
Thank you, Raihan. As you have correctly said, that the host communities were the first responders in the Rohingya response when the crisis started in 2017. Actually, the big influx happened on 25th of August 2017. And truly, it was the people of the host community who came forward with all their efforts, all their ability to provide support to the Rohingya people. After but as days go, the situation changes, and as you have said that presently there are some tensions among the host community and the refugees, and you have rightly said that the host communities are neglected and deprived in the involvement of the response. So what I would like to suggest to mitigate these crises is that there can there should have an, or there can have an extensive platform. Extensive platform should be created where both the people of the host community as well as the Rohingya will get the opportunities to work together Then the other thing, that there are so many committees on the different issues, but I am not pretty sure whether there is the proper representation of the host committee in these committees. So I think if the proper representation of the host committee representative can be made, it can help to address their problems and eventually to solve the problems. The other thing can be done is that um, there is still a lack of coordination among the NGOs and other actors. So I think these things should be addressed properly. Uh, I really feel the lack of coordination of the activities among the NGOs and government agencies and other actors. The other thing that what can be done is that coordination should be on different levels to reduce the tension also. And the other thing is that there are so many complications in processing the activities. I mean, yeah, in the implementation of the programs. So I think both the actors, I mean the authorities as well as the stakeholders, along with the NGOs, should come forward to overcome the problems that are presently prevailing over there, and there should a more coordinated effort to reduce such kind of complications. I think
So,
another
Mobasserul sir,
thing to be addressed.
we have a yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
I would like to add another point is that to ensure accountability and transparency of the donors and the implementing partners, uh, we need to the authorities need to invest more on this field to overcome the gap of coordination among the agencies. Yeah.
There is a question from the audience, Saiful Chaudhary Rubel, who is questioning
Yeah.
to you is that will we be able to send back refugees to their own country? So, what's the answer to that?
It's a we the organizations actually I think all of us are working very closely with the government, and we are actually supporting agencies of the government, and the government is trying the level best to address this issue, as Saiful Chaudhary Rubel has said. But it depends on on the willingness of the Myanmar government also. Bangladesh, what I know is that Bangladesh government is trying to do their best uh, to solve this problem. But if the counterpart, I mean the Myanmar authority doesn't come forward with the goodwill, I think it's going to be a bit difficult. But I'm hopeful that someday it will get solved.
Yes, that's great to know. I hope that it gets solved because this is a really great issue. And we have another question from the audience. Ahmed Sami has written that what are the major changes in humanitarian works due to COVID 19? And I hope we will get the answers from every one of our guests because this COVID 19 situation has created impact humanitarian works overall. So, moving forward to Mr. Ali Johar, sir. Mr. Ali Johar, sir, I have a question for you. Is that you wrote an article about exposing India's refugee policies? Was that your first activism to open
Major
up
change.
about your thoughts, beliefs, and activities for this community? And also, the question of Ahmed Sami is that what are the major changes in humanitarian works due to COVID 19? So, these are the two questions for you, sir.
Yeah, thanks for the questions. Actually, I wrote this article in 2018, but I have started working for the community as a humanitarian worker since 2012. So I have started since long ago. So it was written after there was a fire incident in Delhi, which reduced, shelter of 50 families to ashes, leaving nothing behind, leaving them
Wow.
just the way they arrived with their clothes on their body. So their documents, even refugee card, their documents that they were carrying for Myanmar, everything was burnt into ash. Uh, why I have given this title that this exposed the refugee policy, the policy of India towards refugee, because this fire incident was only possible because there was no policy, good policy from United Nations, UNHCR, as well as humanitarian organizations that are already existing in Delhi, and as well as the policy of the government towards refugee. So the 50 families, they were staying in a place which was very congested, which was hardly a place for just 2 3 families. So they had constructed their shelter in a way that this all these 50 families can be accommodated. So the shelters are made of bamboos, tarpaulin, and plywood. So when there was several alerts from even myself that if there is any fire incident, this entire camp is going to be ashes, into ashes, and again there could be possibly loss of life, and very unfortunate event can occur if there is any fire incident from anywhere. So this fire incident, from where this fire incident happened, there is no clue yet. Although it has been 2 years of this fire incident, there was claim in the social media from some youths that we have torched this terrorist home. So such claims were on the social media, but the the rule of law failed to take action against these things. And again, uh, as there is no policy for refugee like Rohingya refugees in India, they had to find shelter where it is not look like a shelter, but hardly uh, a shelter to accommodate their families, made of plywood, bamboos. It is like living as subhuman. So this, I was also there at the camp at the same time when this fire incident happened. The fire started by 3 a.m. In the night. Fortunately, no one was injured very severely, but everything was lost into the fire. So it was not actually my first writing or activism, but I have been into universities, institutions, organizations with our issues, describing our situation. You know, to answer the second question, what have changed? What are the changes that are facing or brought by the COVID-19? Most of the humanitarian work cannot be done without being physically available, like mental support. There are, these refugees. There is a saying that all the refugees are mentally affected, you know, uh, and all this humanitarian aid should be through physically available of the workforce that are already there from the humanitarian aid worker. So due to COVID-19 pandemic, almost all the organizations are working from remotely from home. So it is hardly possible, like food distribution. If these humanitarian workers are not available at the spot to distribute food or ration, all this entire 1 million people will be starving. If they, so this cannot be really done without being physically available. So there is a huge difference occurred after the pandemic. There is, if I may allow to answer on some, if I may allow to some bring some points onto the how Rohingya crisis is different from the other
Yes.
crisis or the
Yes,
other
sir.
refugee crisis. There are most of the Asian countries, they don't have refugee policy, special policies for refugees. And again, most of these countries are not signatory to the 1951 convention, which is specially for the refugees and giving them a right to live with dignity as other human and humane life. So as there is no, all these countries, most of the countries where Rohingya refugees are taking refuge, most of these countries are not signatory to 1951 convention and they don't have clear policy towards refugees. All the refugees are treated as foreigner in most of the countries like India, Malaysia, in Bangladesh. The policies are made after this mass exodus happened. So it is also informal. When something emergency happen, then only humanitarian worker and government come forward. Okay, let's decide something like this. Bashan sir. So you know these things are to just aid the refugee crisis. Uh, as Rohingyas are stateless in a country like India, when refugees are treated as foreigner. If I may give an example of a student in India, within the Constitution of India, there is a right to education for children below 14 years of age, which is compulsory and free. But after 14 years, that child has to go through several difficulties. Being a Rohingya refugee, especially, it comes at the bottom level because without being with documentation, even you cannot prove yourself a foreigner. So there is no way for a refugee, especially Rohingya refugee child, to go forward with education. So education is a backbone for a nation. When education is not given to a community, it is similar to wiping this entire generation into not only into a corner of subhumanization. This subhumanization of this entire community also burdening the host communities like Bangladesh, India, Malaysia, who have generously given our people shelter.
Uh, yes, sir. That's first of all, it's very tragic to know about the crises that have occurred in your region, the fire crisis, and it's really tragic. And my condolences to the families who have been affected. And secondly, the yes, the Rohingya refugees. There is education crisis as well, and we are trying our best to solve them. And I hope more NGOs and the government would come forward to more innovative strategies to educate the Rohingya refugees in these cases. And now moving forward, there is a question from Karim Minhas, which is that to my knowledge, nothing is impossible to solve so far in any refugee issues as well as Rohingya crisis. Are we willing to take responsibilities that can still save millions of life even in this pandemic? So yes, that's a really good question, and we'll be coming to that. So Mr. Wayne Blair, I have the next question is for you. Is it's that what do you think of the lost generation, children 6 to 18 years? What future lies ahead of these generations if there is no repatriation? Sir,
Okay.
Wayne Blair,
Okay.
sir.
Well, I want to emphasize what Ali Jabbar said, that, clearly education is the backbone and the future for these people, because if they are ever to go back home, they need skills and to be able to contribute to, Myanmar society. So when I was there, schools were very inadequate. and there were no secondary schools for adolescents. And this led to increased child trafficking, worse forms of child labor, substance abuse, increased child marriage, and also radicalization of certain people. So it's very important that education is really a key as or and also teaching employment or vocational skills. So we need to also find meaningful activities for these children, because without meaningful activities they will find other things that are not so positive to do. I think we can look at the old caseload refugees for an answer. The old caseload refugees who've been there since 1991, or the Palestinians, that if we don't have education, we will have more problems. And I think that's what I can say. I am worried. There is Paul Collier wrote a book, The Bottom Billion, and one of the things that led to conflicts was a youth bulge, a group of adolescent youth who had no options, no education. So I think this is a key. And the other thing I want to say is that unfortunately, in humanitarian in human rights law, the Convention for the Rights of the Child, which every country has signed on to except for the U.S., only primary education is a right. Secondary education is not a right, and I think it really needs to be, and there needs to be a greater emphasis on this. So that's what I have to say.
Uh, yes, I also think we also think that the secondary education should be ensured as a right, and it's really needed to be because the youth generation is growing up. They don't know about these things, and they should. The secondary education should be ensured so that all those who are not being benefited
Mm-hmm.
from the education should be benefited from the education. So coming forward,
Can I
coming
say
back to
one
the
more
question
thing?
from the audience.
Oh,
Yes, sir. Please.
I want to say that it's really a misnomer to think that people who are refugees go home quickly. The average refugee stays out of their country from like 18 to 22 years. So people, when they're
Yes.
refugees, they don't usually go home quickly. I have a friend who it took 20 years for him to get repatriated or resettled in the U.S. from Congo. So it takes a long time usually.
Yes. Yes. So yeah, it's a really a big issue and a serious issue about how long it takes to get repatriated, and I hope all the NGOs and governments will come forward to solve these issues as well. And the question from the audience, there is a question from Karim Minhas that are we willing to take responsibilities that can still save million of life even in this pandemic? Are we willing to take those responsibilities, sir?
I think everyone's doing the best they can. Certainly, as humanitarians, our job is to make people's lives easier and give them dignity. If we infect them with coronavirus, we're not doing that. So I think it's new territory for all of us, and we're all learning new lessons, like as Ali Jabbar said, working online instead of in person, and only delivering what essential services. So I think, like I said, it's new territory for all of us. This is, in my opinion, a first.
Okay. Great. I think we should also work on that, and we should. There is also another question from the audience that are the aid workers getting enough facilities to accomplish their job properly? From Ahmed Sami, and we will be back to that question. First, I have another question from Mr. Mobasserul Islam, sir. Is that what are the challenges of humanitarian aid workers in the current time of COVID-19 situation, and what are the solutions that you recommend to mitigate those challenges? Mr. Mubashir, sir. Yes, sir.
The major challenges right now is the major challenges for the humanitarian workers right now is uh, to implement the programs in the field during the pandemic situation. So because of the COVID issues, I can tell you what is happening in the refugee camps here in Cox's Bazar is that most of the programs are very much related to the COVID issues. And so to address these issues, some other issues which are also important for the refugee, people living in the camp, but these things are not being addressed properly. On the other hand, because of the COVID, we also the humanitarian workers also need to maintain uh, social distances, hygiene issues, and other things. Uh, so to implement the regular activities in the camps because of the COVID is not possible. And this is one of the major challenges for the humanitarian workers. Uh, but the good thing is that uh, from the government level, the humanitarian workers are receiving so many are receiving proper help from the government side, so it's a good thing. The other big issue for the humanitarian workers is, we need to work under FD7 in the in the Rohingya camps. Uh, so because of the COVID situation recently, most of the government officials were partially working or almost closed. So we didn't get the approval of these activities on due time. And now we are facing another challenge to implement these programs within the stipulated time. This is one of the major challenges, definitely. And the solution is, I think, we need to invest more on the coordination, and as well as there should have good will from all sides. And this is the actually, I think, the only solution of these challenges right now. There might be many more I can remember right now, or it's not coming to my mind.
Uh, yes, sorry about that. I had some technical difficulties. Uh, so yes, sir. Yes, there are challenges and there are solutions to these, and I hope that we can all come forward to mitigate those challenges and solutions. And uh, there is another question, so that from Ahmed Sami is that are the aid workers getting enough facilities to accomplish their jobs properly? So I hope any one of you can answer that question. Mr. Blair, can you answer this question? Are the aid workers getting enough facilities to accomplish their job properly?
I'm currently stuck at home, so I can't really answer that question. Let the other the other participants
Okay,
answer.
sir. Yeah.
I can
So,
tell you
Mr.
that
Ali Gumar, sir? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mubashir, sir.
I can tell you that aid workers are getting enough facilities to accomplish their activities. Yeah, they are getting. There are some limitations, and it remains everywhere. But uh, under the context and the way the humanitarian workers are providing services, and they are getting the best opportunities, I think, and they are doing their best.
Okay, great to know. I hope they. Yes, that's great to know. That's really great to know. So, there is a comment from Mr. Tarek, Mohammed Tarek. Happy to see you all. Is there any possibility to repatriate refugees through bilateral treaty where Bangladesh and Myanmar are not the signatory party of 51 Convention? Or what kind of steps need to for it or international community? So, this is a really diplomatic question. I hope our guests can answer it. So moving on, I have another question for Mr. Ali Johar, sir. So,
Yeah.
sir, we heard that a film has been made on the Rohingya refugees, which is people from nowhere, which reflects the struggle of this community, and you have worked on this film. So, how did you get engaged with this film, and what's your insight about it, and what's the purpose of this film, which it can achieve, sir?
Rohingya crisis is the least uh, uh, a crisis which has got least attention from the global community, because this community is in Asia. This community is not affecting the community that in West. That is why they are being this crisis is being neglected, as well as even within these Asian countries there are a lot of countries and people and communities that they don't know about these people. So basically, to educate on the crisis, they to picturize the real scenario through maybe one or two stories, this movie was made. It is a fictional story. It is not a documentary, actually. It is a proper Bollywood fictional movie. And the dialogues are being written from the inspirational stories. And it is an engagement between all these countries like Myanmar, Bangladesh, India, and other countries that have been affected by the Rohingya crisis. So it is a story of a girl that has lost her entire family in the genocide campaign by the Myanmar brutal military. So she joined the exodus. She fled to Bangladesh with the community members, and she come to India after a while, searching her only sister that is alive. So this is kind of that story. I have written most of the dialogues which are in Rohingya language, and it is not only in Rohingya language. Actually, it has Hindi language, it has English language as well. So moving on to the question that you have said, it is a diplomatic question. You know.
Yes.
What the international community or Bangladesh government and authorities in Asian countries or ASEAN countries, they must understand that this is a political crisis. This is not a humanitarian crisis. This can be resolved only through political dialogues. And again, this crisis, this political crisis is not between Bangladesh and Myanmar. What many people and government has misunderstood, that this is a crisis between Bangladesh and Myanmar, and that is exactly what Myanmar wants to picturize. This is a crisis between Bangladesh and Myanmar, and in that case, Myanmar wins. It is a crisis between Rohingya and Myanmar, and it is a crisis of identity and political, exclusion. Rohingyas are being made stateless in their own country, and the only solution is giving them full citizenship right back to them as they have enjoyed before. So, what Bangladesh should not fail to understand that this can be resolved Many countries and many governments are thinking that this can be resolved with a minimal pressure or without involving Rohingyas. If I may talk about the repatriation deal that has been signed between UNHCR, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. No Rohingyas have been involved, and even Rohingyas, they don't know what are the points that are written in this repatriation deal. Is this the Bangladesh government that are going to Myanmar, or it is the Rohingya people that have joined Exodus and going to their own place? So ultimately, it should be between first party is Rohingya, the second party is Myanmar, and others are third parties. If we say the governments, humanitarian workers, everyone. So humanitarian aid, these things are very temporary solution. And even, in my opinion, as long as this crisis remains at the sides of Bangladesh, there is no solution. This must go into Myanmar as it root from the Myanmar. So empowering Rohingya refugees to take back their own right, to understand their own right, to realize their own right, educate Rohingyas, supporting them politically is the really right solution as a Rohingya activist, and as a Rohingya youth, I can ever say. And we are really thankful to the Bangladesh government. No countries have done so much that Bangladesh and people of Bangladesh have done. The first responder was the people at the ground level, the host community. Hosting 1 million people, we have said from the beginning, hosting 1 million people will create chaos for the even host community. We can understand that. Education system will be affected, the resources will be affected. The resources that were being used by the host community that are around 1 to 2 million, that is used by now 3 million. Now, almost the double population, the price is going higher, the resources are the same. Even it if this remains for the long time, it will create more misunderstanding between host communities because of the resource crisis. Lands were owned by the host community, and their agriculture land became home to the vulnerable people now. So ultimately, there will be more misunderstanding between both the host communities. No one can really stop, even I don't think Bangladesh government will be able to stop this misunderstanding because of the resources crisis. No, I don't think many people are really happy to share their plate of food for a long time. It can happen for 1 day, 2 day, 1 year. It cannot go for years. Myanmar government must understand. They have a responsibility to take back their own people to their own country, and Bangladesh government must, I really think, act diplomatically, supporting the Rohingya community so that they can voice for themselves.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ali Johar sir, and
You know,
I do
if
also
I
think
if I may want
yes
to
sir,
add
sir,
just quick another point.
yes sir,
I am open challenging international community and everyone. Myanmar government will not take back Rohingya refugees until they are made to take back these people to their own country and to their to their own home, respectively with dignity. So it is always the Rohingyas who has ultimate should be supported diplomatically to realize their right so that they can make Myanmar uh, realize that they should and they must take us back to our own land.
So that's a open challenge from Mr. Ali Johar sir, and yes, Myanmar government. We all would urge Myanmar government to come forward and resolve these issues, and we would also urge UN bodies to also come forward
Urging will
and
not really
resolve these
solve
issues.
this problem.
What else can we do but urge, sir? What else can we do but urge? That's the only question
Bangladesh
actually.
government,
Yes,
Bangladesh
sir.
was once a Pakistan.
Yes, a part of
If
Pakistan.
Bangladesh
Yes.
people go through their own history, they will really understand what Rohingyas really need.
Yes, sir. Yes. Yes. These are great words, and I hope other guests will have something to say about this. Any opinions, Mr. Mobasserul sir, Mr. Wayne sir? Any opinions on this?
Well, I would agree with Ali Jubar. Humanitarians, we pretty much keep people alive until there is a political solution. And I agree with Ali that we need the international community needs to pressure Myanmar to give these people their rights to citizenship. And I don't know if that will happen because there's bigger players involved than just Bangladesh. But I think
Yes. Yes.
that's what needs to happen.
Yes. Okay. It's been a really great session and really great conversation, and I think we also should highlight what the World Humanitarian Day is, and uh, I think what World Humanitarian Day is dedicated to is largely to the humanitarian aid workers, and I hope that everyone would here would agree that humanitarian aid workers are going through various crises, various situations, various conditions in working their lives, working with their life risks in helping others. And I would like to ask Mr. Wayne Bleier, sir, that um, in working in various humanitarian areas, what were the issues that you have faced? What were the major issues that you have faced in your experiences, and how did you go into resolving them? And that would be the last question for our session, actually.
Wow, that's a big question. I think
Sure.
I think I've always tried to follow the Convention for the Rights of the Child and try to uphold children's rights to survival, development, participation, and protection. And I've always advocated for that. And I think the way to do that is diplomatically and persistently to keep at it. And if you get no the first time, don't take that as an answer, but not to alienate people in the process. I think I've been successful because I've been able to do that when I've been able to do it, is to bring people along, try to um, convince people that it's best for children and that is our job, is to uphold the rights of children.
Yes. Yes. Uh, Okay, so that's the last question. I think there are many other questions from the audiences, and uh, I'm sorry, due to consciousness, we could not entertain all those questions. And I'm very lucky to be hosting these three distinguished guests, and I'm very honored to have Mr. Wayne sir, Mr. Ali Johar sir, and Mr. Mobasserul Islam sir here in this World Humanitarian Day. And be with us and support all the humanitarian aid workers and motivate the youth community to come forward and help support all the humanitarian crisis and refugees. So thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you. This would be the end of the session. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you
and thank
for
you to the audience for
Thank you
being
so
with
much.
us. Yes, thank you, sir.
thank you very much.